The Stanford Prison Experiment. In 1971, social psychologist Philip Zimbardo conducted an experiment to explore how people react to social roles. He used a group of 24 male university students in a simulated prison environment constructed in the basement of Stanford University's psychology department. The participants were assigned the roles of guards and prisoners without their knowledge, informed only that it would be a 2-week simulation of a prison where they would earn $15 per day, equivalent to $110 in 2022. To recruit participants, an advertisement was placed in the newspaper. During the experiment, prisoners were obligated to follow the orders of the guards, who were instructed to act assertively without resorting to violence. Zimbardo, in footage later released, emphasized creating boredom, fear, and a sense of arbitrary control over the prisoners' lives, stripping away their individuality. The goal was to make them feel powerless, giving the guards complete authority. The guards were outfitted like real guards, given wooden batons, and efforts were made to create an authentic prison environment. Mirrored sunglasses were provided to hinder eye contact. The prisoners wore uncomfortable outfits resembling real prison attire, complete with chained wrists. Guards were instructed to address prisoners using assigned numbers on their uniforms. This setup aimed to replicate a genuine prison atmosphere. Zimbardo added a dramatic element by having the participants unexpectedly arrested at their homes by the Palo Alto police on August 14, 1971. The arrests were staged, and participants went through actual arrest procedures, including fingerprinting and profile photos. They were then transported to the simulated prison in a real prisoner transport vehicle. Each cell in the prison housed 3 prisoners, and while the cells were narrow, a prison yard was created for the inmates, with spacious areas designated for the guards. Guards worked in shifts of 3, with 8-hour rotations, and were not required to remain in the prison area after their shifts. The experiment initially proceeded smoothly, but on the second day, chaos ensued as prisoners in cell 1 barricaded their doors, undressed, and refused to follow orders, signaling the beginning of disturbing outcomes. Things take a turn. Within just a few days, seemingly ordinary university students transformed into excessively sadistic guards and increasingly timid prisoners. Each day, they became more committed to their roles. As time passed, the guards developed more intense psychological control tactics. For instance, they created a special cell for those who didn't participate in rebellions and began rewarding them. Similarly, by taking away prisoners' bed sheets and sponges, they forced them to sleep on metal beds. Soon, the guards started applying both covert and overt violence on the prisoners. A dark room was created for those who refused to eat, and they were subjected to confinement as punishment. Within a mere 36 hours, prisoner number 8612 began exhibiting, in Zimbardo's words, crazy behaviors, screaming, shouting, cursing, and experiencing uncontrollable fits of anger. Accepting his true psychological state took a considerable amount of time, leading to the decision to release him. Despite only 6 days passing since the start of the experiment, based entirely on role-playing, the relationship between the prisoners and guards had become so sadistic and wild due to the reality of social relationships that Zimbardo had to terminate the experiment prematurely, unable to complete the planned duration. From the early days of the experiment, the student guards applied increasingly violent methods to make the prisoners obey their orders. Initially, the prisoners, knowing that the student guards were on the same level in real life, displayed a stubborn and forced portrayal of their roles. However, escalating guard violence, coupled with the prisoners' resistance, gradually turned them into docile and fearful individuals. Criticism of the experiment. Zimbardo himself acknowledged being influenced by the experiment, as he played the role of the prison superintendent and made decisions allowing the guards to continue the violence against the role-playing prisoners. The experiment aimed to illustrate how individuals unknowingly adopt the roles society assigns to them and, unable to escape the impact of those roles, fulfill them uncontrollably. Numerous debates and counter-scientific articles have been published about the experiment. In 2019, 48 years after the experiment, Philip Zimbardo decided to make the original records and documents of the experiment accessible to the public. Therefore, in the coming years, we may expect more criticisms and counter-publications related to this experiment. For instance, a 2019 article titled "Debunking the Stanford Prison Experiment" by Letexier contains the following words. The Stanford Prison Experiment, SPE, is one of the most famous experiments in psychology. The experiment has been criticized in many ways over the years. However, authors of psychology textbooks have chosen to ignore these criticisms when writing about the SPE, misleading both students and the general public about the scientific validity of the experiment. Results obtained from comprehensive reviews of the Stanford Prison Experiment, SPE, archives and interviews with 15 participants raise further doubts about the scientific value of the experiment. Our data not only support previously raised criticisms, such as the biased and incomplete nature of data collection and the reliance of SPE on an experiment conducted by Zimbardo's students 3 months earlier in one of his classes, but also generate new criticisms. Among these new criticisms are the fact that guards received specific instructions on how to treat prisoners, the reality that guards were told they were not subjects, and the fact that participants were rarely fully immersed in the experiment. One of the criticisms directed at the article so far is that the subjects were not randomly selected. Rather, those selected scored higher than average in dimensions such as aggressiveness, authoritarianism, Machiavellianism, narcissism, and social dominance, while scoring below average in empathy and altruism. However, researchers who developed this criticism conducted a similar study in 2007 by placing a newspaper advertisement. As highlighted by the authors of that study, whether the student profile in 2007 was the same as that in 1971 is a controversial and hypothetical, conjectural, issue. Another criticism developed in light of modern psychology and sociology theories is that the type of bullying demonstrated in this experiment is difficult to occur spontaneously, but rather emerges as a natural byproduct in systems based on coercion and bullying. Some researchers suggest that individuals in the role of guards were led and encouraged by the scientists conducting the experiment, rather than naturally becoming bullies. Another criticism directed at the experiment so far is related to the behavioral diversity among guards. Some guards actively resisted the pressure to engage in bullying. Recognizing this is crucial because, within the framework of modern psychology and sociology, it is understood that the situation influences individuals' behaviors, but individual choices and decisions can still affect outcomes, making individuals accountable for their actions. This is a significant criticism because a widespread belief regarding the Stanford Prison Experiment is that individuals given specific roles in society will inevitably become savage and brutal. If this is the case, institutions' guidelines will be held responsible for individuals' actions. However, if this is not the case, the importance of individuals' decisions will be emphasized, regardless of the degree of corruption in the institution. Thus, efforts to improve corrupt institutions, through individual actions, may also be encouraged. It appears that, contrary to the historical narrative, in experiments similar to the Stanford Prison Experiment, bullying does not always naturally occur. On the contrary, in some experiments, participants have been observed to construct an egalitarian, equal and fair, social structure. However, there are serious criticisms of such experiments as well. For example, the experiment was conducted not in an academic environment but in a format that would be broadcast on the BBC channel as a documentary. The experiment, and this situation may have directly influenced the participants' behaviors. Overall, there are numerous criticisms of the ability of such replication experiments to refute the findings of the original experiment, as evident from the discussions on such a critical, extensive, and ethically challenging experiment. There are numerous perspectives and argument-counterargument pairs, making it impossible to cover them all here. It should be remembered that no single experiment can adequately explain the universal nature of all individuals, and caution should be exercised against making broad and hasty generalizations from individual experiments. Nevertheless, the Stanford Prison Experiment has become one of the most famous psychological experiments, and its fame has been extended to various countries through the cinemas. The debates surrounding it are expected to persist for a long time.